someone has a physical infirmity and you cast that demon out, you might have to pray for some things to be fixed. Let's talk about one. Let's talk about autism. Rick, did you just go there? Yeah. Like, I know a minister who has seen lots of kids that are autistic, that he cast that demon out and they were healed, and then he had to pray and their brain was rewired and they were fixed. Yeah, I just went there. I mean, you can get online and see lots of examples of it. If it's not demonic, then we have to say God made them that way. Like, that's the only other explanation. Why is my kid have autism? Well, either the devil's attacked them, he's brought this infirmity upon them, he's got them where he wants them, and or God just doesn't like them very much and he made them that way. Well, my God doesn't make junk. God doesn't make mess-ups. God doesn't make people that way. So let's quit being nice and putting a Band-Aid on stuff and giving it medicine. And this goes so much bigger than autism, people. I just gave you that as an example.
This pastor claims that autism is demonic. It's a demonic attack or a possession. And he's not the only one, but we're going to get into this subject and we're going to address this claim right here on Keeping It in Context. Now, this type of a subject to me is very serious, not because I have an autistic child or a sibling or loved one, but because of the many who do and how misleading and fallacious this claim really is. To publicly declare autistic people to be demonized, not only is it degrading and insulting, but for those who would actually believe these pastors who say such foolishness, it creates so much unnecessary stress on themselves. It creates a false idea of their autistic child or loved one, and just a false idea of God's creative process. I strongly believe that these pastors, such as Rick Morrow, who's the individual in our clip, and Greg Locke, who's also stood up on pulpits and said the same thing, and Catherine Crick, and many others who are a part of these deliverance ministries, which unfortunately are on the rise today, need to be called out for making this ridiculous claim. And the truth about autism really needs to be presented to avoid further harm from being dealt to the autistic community and their loved ones. Now, I'm sure most people are aware of what autism is, but for those who may not be aware, autism is basically a neurological development condition that often leads to challenges with social interactions, communications, and behavior. The ways in which people with autism learn, think, problem solve tends to range from, highly skilled to severely challenged. Some people with autism may require significant support in their daily lives, while others may need less support and in some cases live entirely independent of any support. According to Autism Speaks, which is the largest autism research organization in the U.S., 1 in 36 children in the U.S. have been identified with autism. You have 4 in 10 for boys and 1 in 10 for girls. Even though there may be many challenges that come with autism, many with autism are able to become very productive and achieve tremendous accomplishments throughout their life. In fact, there are many famous athletes and musicians and inventors that were discovered to be autistic. Mary Temple Grandin is a scientist and a professor of animal science at Colorado State University who has authored more than 60 scientific papers on animal behavior, and she deals with autism. Charles Schultz was the creator of the well-known comic strip Peanuts. He dealt with autism. Clay Marzeau is currently a professional competitive surfer from Hawaii. He was diagnosed with autism as a child, and yet he has won many surfing competitions and had many accomplishments, including 2 perfect 10s during a National Scholastic Surfing Association at the age of 15. And even Mozart and Beethoven, who were very accomplished musical composers, they dealt with autism. Autism, ladies and gentlemen, is no more a demonic problem than any other human condition that we as human beings may have to deal with. With that being said, I'm going to replay the clip from Pastor Rick Morrow of Beulah Church in Richmond, Missouri, and I'm going to address his statements accordingly.
If it's not demonic, then we have to say God made them that way. Like, that's the only other explanation. Why is my kid have autism? Well, either the devil's attacked them, he's brought this infirmity upon them, he's got them where he wants them, and or God just doesn't like them very much and he made them that way.
So the pastor here says if autism is not demonic, then we have to say that God made them that way. Either the devil has attacked them and has put that infirmity on them, or God just doesn't like them very much and decided to make them that way. Now, first of all, making autism simply a product of demonic possession or a demonic attack and nothing more is just utter nonsense. A person who is born autistic is not born demonically attacked or demon possessed or even oppressed. There is no biblical evidence to prove that autism is nothing more than a product of demonization, and none to prove that anyone even is born demonized. And secondly, why would the possibility of God allowing a child to be born autistic be out of the question? Why is he so quick to conclude that it can't be God and that it has to be demonic? According to John chapter 9 and starting in verse 1, the reason for the man being born blind was not because he was demon possessed or because something sinful was done by that particular man or by his parents, but it was because of the sovereignty of God. Verse 1 says, as he was passing by, speaking of Jesus, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? That's kind of a dumb question if you ask me, because how could the man sin if he wasn't even born yet? But yeah, whatever. Neither this man nor his parents sinned, Jesus answered. This came about so that God's work might be displayed in him. As you can see, God didn't make him blind because he disliked him or was punishing him. He didn't allow him to be blind because of some generational curse due to the sins of his parents. It wasn't because of a demonic attack. God allowed him to be born blind to prove that disabilities are not all due to sins or even a demonic attack, but are opportunities for God to either reveal his miraculous abilities or to simply draw people closer to him with our faith through our weaknesses caused by a potential disability. Jesus in this passage was actually trying to break the religious stigma that was set in the minds of his disciples and even in that culture, that disabilities doesn't always have to be looked at as a negative, but actually as a positive, that God can use our disabilities as a means to bring out his glory and to draw us closer to him. This is why we have passages like Romans chapter 8, starting in verse 26, that likewise the Spirit also helpeth with our infirmities or with our disabilities or our weaknesses. For we do not know what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit itself makes intercession for us, stands in the gap for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. And we know, verse 28, that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. Suggesting that if God created a child being born with autism, it would be due to him not liking the child is just such an ignorant thing to say. As a matter of fact, his next statement is probably the most ignorant and insulting thing to say about someone with autism.
Well, either the devil's attacked them, he's brought this infirmity upon them, he's got them where he wants them, and or God just doesn't like them very much and he made them that way. Well, my God doesn't make junk. God doesn't make mess ups. God doesn't make people that way. So let's quit being nice and putting a Band-Aid on stuff and giving it medicine.
Now, to be honest with you, I've heard a lot of crazy stuff over a pulpit, a lot of nonsense, even stuff from my old church, just crazy stuff. But this is a statement where, you have to get up and you have got to leave. You cannot be honored as a pastor and call out a specific group of people with a specific condition and then compare them to junk or mess ups. If that's the case, then anybody with any kind of disability would be considered mess ups or pieces of junk. Perhaps this pastor also believes that if you were born with a missing limb or a failed organ or some kind of an impairment or a syndrome or some type of an abnormal genetic disorder, that you were a mistake, that if you're listening and this is something that you deal with, that you are a mess up, that you are garbage, a piece of junk. I mean, he would have to believe this because to him, God wouldn't make people like that. God doesn't make mess ups. He doesn't make junk. Everything that God makes basically should be perfect, should be flawless, shouldn't have any conditions. But of course, we've already debunked that. We've already proven this to be foolishness because we've just read in John chapter 9 that the man who was born blind was because of God. He wasn't a mess up. He wasn't a piece of junk. He wasn't a product of demonization. God actually made him that way for a specific reason. Not only that, but if the truth be told, none of us, including this pastor, is born without any imperfections or without any flaws or without any type of condition. Every single one of us are going to be born with something, some kind of an issue, some kind of a condition. It's just that some are more obvious and more challenging to deal with than others. Some are immediate while others are down the road. We're all going to have some kind of an issue because we are human beings. We have to deal with original sin, which creates issues in our humanity. Anything from chromosome abnormalities to genetic mutations to missing limbs or missing organs or, the lack of blood flow in specific areas such as the brain or other organs or, complications at or after childbirth or even eating certain foods and allergies. They're not a demonic problem. They're just a human problem. Now, is this to discredit the possibility of demonic activity in humanity? Are we saying that disabilities are not at all connected to demon possession? Well, no, we're not saying that. Scripture actually does give us instances where this is the case. In Luke chapter 13 and verse 11, it talks about a woman that had a disabling spirit, which she had for 18 years. Mark chapter 9 and verse 25 talks about a man with a deaf and a mute spirit. Disabilities can be caused by demons, but this does not mean, and neither must we conclude, that every single disability or infirmity comes from a demon. The blind man in John chapter 9 already cancels out that conclusion. Not only does the blind man in John chapter 9 cancels out that conclusion, but there are many other passages all throughout the scriptures that cancels out that conclusion as well. Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 10, "Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses for Christ's sake, for when I am weak, then am I strong." When Paul mentions infirmities, is he suggesting that he is taking pleasure in being demonically possessed with a disability? Well, no. He is rather suggesting that he is being content with whatever physical weaknesses that he has to deal with due to his natural fallen condition. In Romans chapter 15, starting in verse 1, Paul says, "We then that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak and not to please ourselves. Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good to edification." If the infirmities Paul is speaking about were demonic, why would he tell them to bear with those who have them? Why did he not just tell them to cast them out? Well, it's because infirmities and disabilities are not always rooted in demonic activity, and neither do people need to be always delivered from them. Paul is actually admonishing those who aren't dealing with a specific condition, who are strong, to help those patiently care for those who are dealing with it. And autism fits right in that verse. For anyone who has a loved one or a child with autism, my plea to you is that you utterly and boldly reject this kind of theology, this type of ideology. It is not sound teaching, and it misrepresents the autistic community and the view that God has towards them. Psalm chapter 139, starting in verse 13, says this, "For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Regardless of whatever imperfections that I have, the writer is saying that I'm still fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them. I'm sure many of you who may come across this video and you have children or you have a loved one with autism, maybe you have heard of people making conclusions about them. Maybe you've went to a pastor or a supposed spiritual leader who tried to convince you that your child was demonically possessed and they needed to get the autistic demon cast out of them. Maybe you even had a voice in your own head trying to tell you that that's probably the best rationale to why your child has autism. Well, I'm here to tell you, and I'm hoping to convince you that that is not the case, that your child who does, or your loved one who does have autism, is not a product of demonization. Although we may not understand the why for the conditions we receive, we should always remember the who. Always remember who is in control and who always knows what's best for us. We might think something is a negative, but if we can change our perspective, we will come to find out that that negative is actually the greatest positive thing that could ever happen to us, especially if it's for the glory of God. Well, that's it for this video. I hope it was helpful, and I also hope that it was encouraging for those who have loved ones and children with autism. And even if you yourself, you're watching and you have autism, we want you to know that you have so much support out here. We love and appreciate each and every one of you. What you heard in the video clip does not represent true Christianity. It does not represent true Christian theology and ideology. And I pray that, as you go on through your life, that you will experience success, that you'll overcome whatever adversity or challenges that you do face, and know that God is with you and that he loves you and he's always going to be on your side, regardless of whatever the conditions may be. And of course, if you haven't done so already, please like, share this video, leave some comments below, and also subscribe to this channel if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to speed when I drop a new video. And of course, as always, as you delve back into the word, just remember to remind yourself that as I'm studying the word, I got to make sure I keep everything in context.